Hey, welcome everybody. Reagan Archibald here with Go Wellness and East West Health. And I've got a very special guest today, none other than Shannon Waller. Shannon is with Strategic Coach. She's been with them since 1991. Shannon is, if you look at Strategic Coach, many of you have heard me talk about Dan Sullivan, and he's been on the podcast a couple of different times. But Shannon has taken his concepts and actually applied it to coaching structure and coaching programs. She's been doing that since 1995. She's worked at facilitating a relationship between entrepreneurs, healthcare entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs of all industries, and made this nice collaboration with the team and the entrepreneur. So they don't have this concept where there's a boss and there's one person who like manages everything. So she's created a lot of nice synchronicity in my life and my practice with the East West team. And then also she's just inspired thousands of people. So Shannon, it's an honor to have you on the program, on the show.
I am absolutely delighted. This is my favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah, now Shannon and I, we've been brainstorming about, I've asked her to be on a couple months ago. She's very busy schedule. She's all over the world and doing some phenomenal things. But what we're going to talk about today is just creating a culture around you, a culture within your practice, within your clinic, within your company, that can really start serving more and more people, because I'm on a mission to transform healthcare in America. One of my goals, Shannon, you probably heard me say this, but we're on a mission to reverse pain and chronic disease for 1 million people by 2025. So imagine if we lived in a world with no pain, no chronic disease. I feel like that's my life's work right there. And so yeah, we've got a number, but in order to do that, we have to have like really peaceful organizations, and we also need to have collaboration through the community. But what are some of the things that you've done at Strategic Coach to help create the culture that you guys have? Because it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's amazing.
Thank you. One of the ways that I would describe Strategic Coach's culture is very collaborative and cooperative. And this actually came out in a conversation with some team members that I was working with, and someone said, it was so great when I joined the company because I didn't come into a competitive situation where people are trying to be better than me, or wondering where I'm gonna fit in the status ladder. But really, they just wanted to help me be successful, and everyone's very cooperative and very collaborative to help me do that. And it was a little bit of like, oh, that's a concept I should talk more about. And I think that's the biggest difference I see between successful, really entrepreneurial teams, because they have the biggest opportunity to do this. But really, particularly within Strategic Coach, is that we're all focused on, how can each of us get better at our strengths and our innate talents and skills. And we have this amazing concept called unique ability. And unique ability, just to give you this short definition, there's a couple different ones. One is it has to be something you're really good at doing. So it starts with being, something you think you're really good at doing, but not, that doesn't qualify. But something you're really, really talented at doing by other people's measure, not just your own. You also have a passion for it. You love it. Your eyes light up when you do this particular type of activity. The other two is that gives you energy. It doesn't drain you. And we know that system is binary. It either adds or subtracts from your energy level. And then the last point, and this is where people get a little bit sucker punched, it's a paradox, is you can see room for never-ending improvement. And in our kind of normal coaching or teaching, we've been taught that, well, if you can get better, that must mean you're not very good. And that's actually not true. It's only the people who are really, really passionate what they're doing that keep getting better, that keep upping their level and having new insights that they didn't have before. And they have the energy to pursue that. So if you're into excellence and, superb abilities, this concept is great. And as Dan Sullivan would say, it's also where you can be a hero to other people. Unique ability does not exist in a vacuum or a closet. It has to be out there creating value for others. So where you can be a hero, where you do it and has a multiplier impact, that's your unique ability. And so we consider that a key part of our culture. And that's a lot of what helps to eliminate that competition is how can my unique ability coordinate and cooperate with yours is really what's the teamwork that's required between us. Not that I'm better than you or I'm higher on the hierarchy than you. That's kind of irrelevant. How well are you doing what you're great at, and what difference is it making, and how can we expand and leverage that impact? Those are the type of conversations I think that lead to a great culture, and one that's needed to accomplish goals like yours, Reagan. If people are fighting each other, all that energy, emotional, mental, intellectual energy is focused on competing against each other as opposed to aligning to accomplish this much bigger goal. So I really think it's kind of required now that we move to this new level of teamwork, which is possible in entrepreneurial companies to a greater degree than corporate or bureaucratic organizations, although I've seen both kinds of teamwork in both kinds of companies. But I think we have an opportunity that we may not be aware of to kind of up our game in terms of culture and teamwork.
Yeah. Well, I think it's well said, because if you look at the game that people are playing, and are we actually in this, are we at work today? Are we actually going to help resolve pain and chronic disease? Or are we going to just argue with each other and have disagreements and not work together? And one of the key concepts that I really resonated with up front is, instead of, as a business owner, calling it my staff or my employees, you guys say, no, these are team members. And you guys feel more like a family than a team, actually, when I go to, and there are some family members there, which is cool. Your mom.
We're not a family business. We're a business of families, is what I like to say, because there are little groups of families, and I work with my mother and my sister. We have so for over 20 years successfully.
Very successfully, yeah.
Yeah, it's really kind of fun. But thank you. It does feel like family, and I think you get comments like this. I get comments like this, like, wow, where do you find such great people? And everyone's so happy, and we'll stop and hug each other in the hallways, not just you when you come in. We like to hug around here. And it feels very friendly. People feel very safe. Creating a safe environment, I think, is also really key for people to be themselves. So the freedom to be yourself is key, and we have some self-awareness tools and profiles that we use to facilitate that. But it's awesome to come to work and know that you can be yourself, you are appreciated and accepted for who you are, and people are going to support you to make your best contribution. That's a happy place to come to work. And people are sometimes like, okay, family, happy to be away from the complexity of my family and happy to come to work, which is a really nice environment to create for people. And then I think what we can do, all the great things that we're up to, and be really successful in that.
Yeah, and there's so few people who have that freedom where they appreciate going to their work. Because I think everyone who listens to this has worked in that job where you're just like, okay, it's 3:00, I got 2 more hours to slug this thing out. And I notice at East West, we're just like pushing them out the door, like, okay, it's good enough for today. Like. And that's amazing. But, you touched on a word, it's called hero. And, I think the only way you can really be a hero is if you're competing against somebody, then you're out to get them. You're out to one-up them. And I always have a lot of, I coach several healthcare entrepreneurs throughout the country. And they're always saying, well, man, you share so much of your knowledge. Aren't you afraid someone's going to steal this from you? I'm like, I hope they steal it from me. Please, by all means. I can't do this alone. And so I think from the old world perspective, even the political realm, it's like, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. I know you're in Canada. I don't know what the party systems are there, but there's this like divide that gets between us. But if you can focus on what you love doing the most and what you thrive at, you can be a hero. Then it just takes away that divide, because I see, someone on my team as being an incredible diagnostician, or we have one of our physician assistants, like, he's just so good at injections. Like, that's just his thing. And it's like,
and patients really appreciate that.
Yeah. And it's like, why would I say, no, I'm better than you at this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But that's kind of the old philosophy. But how have you guys transcended that and gotten rid of competitiveness in your organization and like really focused on being heroes?
What a great question. To my mind, it comes down to mindset. Wanting to be a hero to other people is a mindset. It also requires a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. Mm-hmm. So if you think it's a zero-sum game, so in other words, if you're going to win, it must mean that I'm losing. That's where that competitive, because you're looking to share this static, pie that's only this big, and everyone wants their piece. And instead, just exactly what you said, it's just like, I can't do this alone. The pie is much bigger than any of us can actually, appropriately handle. Let's get some help here. And that's an abundance mindset that even though it might be another practitioner, you're really not in competition. There's lots to go around. Gosh,
Yeah.
no, there's a ton of people that need to get out of pain. And, you know how many people you can deal with, but there's lots more. And so, you actually want to engage and enroll people in this vision and let's align and work together and let's be a hero to the people in pain. It's not about me trying to be better than you. So in terms of our company, what we do, we kind of actually interview for that. So we ask some questions in our interview process. We talk a lot about what it takes to have an entrepreneurial attitude, and I wrote a book about it because it's been something so hard for entrepreneurs to explain to their teams. So I wrote a book for the team members. So have an entrepreneurial attitude. Go ahead.
And that book is called Team Success Handbook. That's the
Team
one.
Success Handbook.
Phenomenal. And where can they get that?
They can get it on Amazon, my favorite place to go. Yeah. It's also available on the Strategic Coach website on our store, so strategiccoach.com. And then also coming soon on the Strategic Coach website is also a video series that will be available to non-Strategic Coach clients as well to kind of help you walk your team through that whole process. So that's one of my key projects.
It's awesome. Well, that's exciting. And then, so the entrepreneurial attitude, what is that?
Entrepreneurial attitude is a way of looking at things. And again, it is more on that abundance than scarcity side. It's really about, everything from take initiative, take action, down to learn how to handle strong emotions. Yeah, one of the things that's very true in entrepreneurial companies is that we feel really strongly about things, and when people are happy or sad or angry. And if I've worked a little bit long time ago in a non-entrepreneurial company, a very largest corporation in Canada, as a matter of fact. They were our clients, and everyone, they felt the same. Humans are humans; we feel things. But what you could actually show, what you could communicate, very different. So everyone had this kind of face on, and it wasn't their real face. Yeah. And my mom will say, "Tell your face how you're feeling." And so you kind of have to learn all the subtleties and the subterfuge that goes on, and that's called politics. And that doesn't really exist in entrepreneurial companies. And if a team member comes from a corporate or bureaucratic environment where they're used to kind of the, pretend, it's always bad, but it's definitely not completely someone's whole self. And then they come and work with an entrepreneur who's like, "Yay, no," they're like a little stunned, and it can be a bit shocking. So
wait. So you're saying entrepreneurs are a little bipolar? Is that what you're?
No, I wouldn't say that. That's true of some of them, but certainly not most or all. But we're emotional.
Emotional,
yes. We feel things, and guess what? There's no one around to tell us to filter it. So right. Now, hopefully, we're kind of aware of our impact. That's another learning for some entrepreneurs. But it's the one that most people say that they need to improve. So I have a little quiz, a little scoring, which is actually, there's a little quiz if someone wants to do the entrepreneurial attitude exercise. It's available at yourteamsuccess.com. It's a download.
Okay.
And if you're an entrepreneur filling it out, so if you're a health professional, you're an entrepreneur with a specialty in healthcare. But it's also great for team members to fill it out. And if you're a patient, then you might want to score yourself too, just for fun. And It has, never always. So I'm going to assume that pretty much most people will not score themselves a 1 or never. But I always, when I'm coaching it, say, let us know the 2 that you do best and the 1 you most want to improve, which may not be your lowest score. So it's fun, but that learning how to handle strong emotions is definitely one. Communication is another one. Closing open files is another part of an entrepreneurial attitude. Because if someone operates in a silo, that does not really work for cooperation and collaboration in an entrepreneurial company.
Yeah.
And you can't be a hero to someone if you hoard information as power. You're actually being the opposite of a hero. So those are the kind of things we really do to encourage the type of teamwork behavior that we're looking for. And if someone is not modeling that or can't adapt to our culture, then they don't work here anymore. So it's kind of a little bit of a line in the sand, and we do it compassionately. Another book I wrote was Multiplication by Subtraction: How to Gracefully Let Go of Wrong Fit Team Members. And we work with people a lot to get them to be a right fit, but if for some reason it's not, then actually exiting them is better for them and for you. So culture is important, and the biggest, most important issue is values. If people cannot reflect your value system, if they're only paying it lip service, it will come back to bite you. And taking action on that is really key. Being clear and reinforcing your values, using your powers for good, I like to say, is key. But then also having consequences when people don't live those is also really important if they're going to be credible, if they're going to be believable.
Yeah. Well, I think it creates a lot of creativity in an organization when you can just be you. Mm-hmm. And I find I've employed hundreds of people throughout my career, and I feel some people try and they want corporate back into the entrepreneurial organization. And I freak them out a little bit because, man, we start new projects and I get really excited about something and we're selling that product or we're getting that service going before, all the fact finders in my organization know what's going on. And they come from the corporate world where it's just like, okay, we're going to go and see the committee and then it's going to go through the approval process and then we're going to go. But I've got a good knack. I've got a good, when I see a service or a product, I said, this is going to impact people's lives. I don't want to wait. I can't wait more than 24 hours. So I tried on myself first. I said, yep, it's good. Now let's go. So
they don't realize that you are the research committee. You're also the approval committee. You're the standards committee, and you're the everything. It's right there. Well, in large companies, it can be 3 to 5 years worth of research before something comes out. And the mindset shift from entrepreneurial from corporate to or bureaucratic to entrepreneurial is a major one that I think a lot of people don't appreciate. And you and I were talking in preparation for this, that I think a lot of the training that practitioners get, and also all the support team, nurses and, people who support the whole medical practice get trained in that same mindset. They get trained in the hierarchy. They get trained in competitiveness. They get trained in not speed. And not doing things quickly, and it's a big, they can see the kind of juicy fruit over here. I was like, oh, I want that, but the transition of mindset is something that some people A, struggle with, or B, just aren't really prepared for, because the language in both practices is the same. You still have patients, you still have care, you still have reports, you still have this. So the language is the same, but the meaning and the speed and the emotion and the intensity and the velocity is completely different.
Yes.
So people really understanding that, which is again why I wrote the Team Success Handbook, to explain that, because it's a shift that people weren't aware needed to happen, and it has caught them by surprise. Sometimes once they know, they're like, oh, now I get it, and they're cool. But then other people go, oh, I think I want to go back. But very few. Most people, when they see the opportunity that's available to bring new breakthrough procedures to people really fast, is very exciting, and to make a bigger difference in the world and to know their impact, that's pretty juicy in and of itself. So a lot of people, once they know the context, actually shift very quickly.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to forget the context when you're in this busy mode and if you're feeling stressed. And so I think one of the interesting things that I see, not only in my own life, but in our culture, is when we start talking about it, I find in healthcare, it can be very heavy. I mean, we work with patients who they're like, look, I've tried every single doctor. I've been to all these specialists. All I get is we've done as much as we can. We just don't know. And so they've lived 25, 30 years, can't get out of bed. They're in chronic pain. They've tried all the medications. The medications have made things worse. And so we deal with a lot of heavy individuals. And so it's hard when you're an emotional being like myself, it's hard not to get drawn into that vortex. So what we've tried to do in our East-West culture is make things a little lighter, and we notice, I like to have a lot of humor around me, and I find that it lightens the patients, their burden. Yeah. What do you guys do? I mean, you guys are a very fun, loving, humorous group, also maintaining like a certain level of professionalism, respect. How have you guys kind of bridged that gap and brought humor into Strategic Coach?
Well, it's one of those things that is very much instigated by the founders, by the owners. And then they actually tend to attract people who are like-minded, which is kind of fun. So I would consider us a fairly playful company. And we just did a company survey. It's a profiling tool called Prince. It's a cousin to Enneagram, if anyone's familiar with that. We're big on profiles, as you can tell. But anyway, one of them is to enjoy life and be happy. It is one of the predominant underlying motivators for a lot of our team.
Oh, really?
And both Dan and both Babs, co-founders of Strategic, and me, and my husband, it turned out, also have that. So to enjoy life and be happy, we want to get results, and we want to have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
And if you've been in our offices, and if anyone's familiar with Gaping Void cartoons, they're fun, they're kind of crazy, and they're in like pop colors, like bright blue and bright orange and pink and green. And so we have these now cartoons lining up our front entranceway. So, there's a lot that's done from both a visual sense in the environments, also first class. Dan's always loved first class hotels, and he loves the hospitality. So we have that real hospitality mindset. And, things are physically light. We're just finishing right now the renovation of our cafe here. So we have a meeting spot for all of our team to get together, and our clients too. You've been in it. And so it's literally getting lightened up. It's all whites and grays and this lovely warm orange. So, in the physical space, Babs, if you've met her, you have to picture, everyone has to picture Babs for just a moment. So Babs is 6'2.5" with Pilates. She goes to 6'3". And she's got curly hair.
Yeah.
So when I first met her, I was like,
with hair. Yeah. Yeah.
She doesn't wear heels much, thank goodness. But she is so light and so bubbly and playful. And she does these Ask Babs videos for our team. And there's always like some dancing. The latest picture at our event this week was her like kind of doing this. So she just brings that bubbling energy, and she's very much herself. She has a rapier sharp mind. I mean, put this woman in front of our financial statements and she'll run circles around you. So it doesn't subtract at all from her focus on goals or her ability to cut to the chase and give people direction. She has command as one of her strengths, but she's also a lot of fun. And so there's just, we have this focus on having fun and producing great results at the same time. And that's a little bit the culture of our company. And we don't think we have to not be one or the other. So we just kind of bring our personality, and we attract people who appreciate that. I think that's the other part of it. And I'm sure, some of the people you work with, your patients, are like, oh my gosh, thank goodness someone's got a sense of humor. Thank God someone can play around with this and recognize that there's more to me than my pain. That's actually very healing in and of itself. So how you talk to people, your environment that you're in, you talk to me about the videos that you guys have, which are playful and fun. Right. And why not? There's an expression that I heard from someone that is be lighthearted, serious-minded. Yeah. And in my coaching, they said that I was that. And to my mind, that is the highest compliment. Yeah. So I think being lighthearted, serious-minded is a great description of how most of us can create value for our audiences, whoever they are. But especially people who are in pain. I think a lot of people don't appreciate that little levity is actually really healing, really healthy.
Yeah. So, I mean, humor is the best medicine, is, like Norman Cousins. I don't know. Do you know his story? How he just, healed himself from cancer by watching funny videos. I mean, he just watched comedy locked himself in a hotel and came out. He's like, all right, I have cancer no more. Like, it's, phenomenal. So, the interesting thing, I mean, if we look at, so now I love drawing contrast. Yin yang is something in Chinese medicine that's always resonated with me, because you've got to look at both sides of the coin. And if we look at the kind of the microcosm, which is, me one-on-one with a patient, how could we get that out to 1 million people and help them really transform their health, transform their life, get rid of their pain and chronic disease? Well, I say, the only way I can do that is collaborating with other people. So the other side of the coin is, in medicine, in pharmaceutical world specifically, is very competitive. It's very profit driven. It's an industry that's somewhat cutthroat. They've got big profit margins, and every year they have stakeholders, they have people who've invested money into these organizations and in the insurance game as well. And so what I'm looking at is, well, how can we just, if I can attract and make an impact on all the physicians, all the practitioners out there who really just would love to practice lightheartedly, serious-minded, but actually in a way that gets to the root cause of conditions instead of just masking it with a symptom. How could we best do that in creating a culture that just is spreading throughout the entire world? I mean, I keep wanting to say country, but you're in Canada. But we'll just say the world because it's all connected these days. But what do you think are some things I could do, Shannon, to influence a better culture in healthcare?
What a brilliant question. I love that. A couple things. Number one is all of the behaviors that you're talking about that you want to see more of need to come out of a certain mindset. So
Okay.
I actually think that identifying the key mindsets, and you know what your mindset is about health, about pain, about drugs, about lifestyle, about stress. One of the connections I made earlier was that, a lot of stress and people being in pain has to do with their environment that they're in. There's documented evidence of that.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of different dimensions to this whole thing. But going back to mindsets, just being really aware of how do you think of things that's different than the standard traditional profit. Well, I'm a big fan of profit, so it's not that. But when it's only profit, not so good. So, what are the mindsets required? And you'll know yours. You'll know the ones of the practitioners with whom you just really resonate. And this is great. This is coaching from Dan Sullivan to really get clear on what those mindsets are. And we have this cool thing called a mindset scorecard. And Dan's got a little quarterly book about this. Nice. Our books are tight, short, they're succinct.
They're readable.
Good for people with short attention spans like most of us these days. Yeah. And it's really about, helping people identify where they're just consider themselves to be a victim and they're actually not capable of making progress. The people who can see a better alternative but are kind of stuck in that frustration mode, there's a lot of doctors, a lot of practitioners who are in that mode right now. And just having someone talk to them like, oh, are you feeling this, and this? Do you want this but don't see how to get it? People will be like, oh my gosh, someone gets me. And that's huge. Column 3 is kind of interesting. It's really where people are kind of more focused on status. They've worked really, really hard to get where they're at and they're good, but they actually don't want to grow. So there's that, who's that status orientation. And then there's going to be some, and those are the people you probably already found, that are just always into growing. What's best? What's next? And transformation is just how they live almost every part of their life. So those are the ones that tend to find you. Those are, you just have to, say, hey, I'm out here. And they're like, awesome. And they fly to meet you. Those are the sweet ones. But where the real opportunity is identifying where people have that ideal, but are frustrated with their ability to do it in their current structure, with their current colleagues, with the current medical, payment systems, what have you. And really talking to them and then designing a process, this is stage 2, for if you want this, here are some of the steps that you need to take. It's probably steps that you've done. I know you've coached other people to do it. And then they go, and then, could take 6 months, could take a year or 2 years, but then they're on the other side. They're up to that transformation level. And then you start to create this critical mass. And Dan and I were working on his book yesterday, which is called My Plan for Living to 156. I know you'll have him on on this series to talk about that. It sounds like a crazy goal, but he wanted to live a complete century. And as he said, he missed the 20th. So that's where that number comes from. If he's born in 1944, just had his 74th birthday. But what we're talking about is the fact that mindset drives technology. It drives innovation, and that critical mass of people who are like, okay, I want to live longer. I want to live longer healthy. I love the expression. I think it comes from Younger Next Year, live long, die short.
Yeah.
Sign me up for that.
Compressed morbidity is what we call it.
Oh, I like that too.
So it's just like, okay, you just died in your sleep. The day before, you're on a great hike and enjoying your family and ate some good food and yeah. Yeah,
like that's how I want to beam up. That would be my preference. So as more and more people get that as a goal, as a driver, they'll find people who will help their team. We'll put teams together to help support everyone's unique and everyone has a geographic area that they're primarily tied to still. You know, and so we need lots of people out there who can support that vision, and then that will drive entrepreneurial focus, will drive those innovations. The other thing I think that's relevant here in terms of creating that critical mass is to really recognize that there is an entrepreneurial part of this. If you expect government, if you expect some bigger, larger system to do it for you, and you're just railing against them, why aren't they there yet? You're probably going to die an unhappy person, because you'll actually leave your profession because you're so unhappy with it. Right. And yet if you decide to take ownership and initiative yourself and have that entrepreneurial attitude we were talking about earlier, then you're like, oh, you know, actually I'm an entrepreneur with a specialty in, and then fill in the blank for that. And then you'll start to think differently about it. That's part of that mindset shift, is really going, oh, okay, where's the opportunity? Where, you know, how can I solve someone's biggest danger, what they worry about? How can I maximize an opportunity here? How can I reinforce what people are already doing well, their strengths? So we call that. You know, how I think I know what people want 3 years from now, but do I really know? Am I asking that question and being curious and then looking for the solutions? I mean, this is you to a T. Like, you are so tuned in to what people want, what their problems are, and you just have all the antenna open, you know, to receive new information. So you find things, and things find you that don't find other people, because you are simply this radar out looking, but it's only because you have that mindset. You know, Dan's whole thing is, you know, until you get the mindset, those magic technologies don't show up for you, including stem cells. So, you know, it starts with how you think. And I think if people could get that through their heads, then all of a sudden a lot more opportunity would open up.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
That's a long answer to your question.
Well, no, and it all does. And it's like, you know, the mindset, and this is, you know, part of why we're having the conversation, is because, and if we could get more and more doctors to realize that, man, the old way of practicing medicine, which is get the diagnosis, here's the drug, you know, and then write out the prescription, the patient's on that medication for the rest of their life. Most doctors don't like practicing that way, but they don't know another way. Yeah. And I hear that from our patients every day. They come to the clinic and they're so refreshed that somebody is actually going to dig in and not just look at that one diagnosis and not try to isolate that, but say the diagnosis is important, but you know, that's maybe a central piece, is where you've got these symptoms and this disease that's manifesting. But what about the periphery? Because that's what I'm concerned with, is how's your gut? How's your hormones? What's your lifestyle like? What's your nutrition? How's your brain health? And then how can we regenerate that and really transform your life? Because if the periphery gets missed, then the center can never be stable. So,
well, if you look at that manifestation of a disease as actually a symptom of the greater imbalance of the whole. You know, one of the things I love is that and I'm huge into preventive health. That's probably why we're so simpatico, is that, you know, I hate being looked at as just one individual part. Now, if I break my leg, you know, friend of mine her son had a burst appendix, thrilled that there was, you know, we have a great critical care system. It's actually not a health care system.
Yes, and critical. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Atul Gawande who wrote this brilliant book called The Checklist Manifesto, and he's a doctor with the World Health Organization. Brilliant writer, if anyone hasn't seen him yet. I think he was the one that was talking about our system is designed for critical care. It actually does exactly what it was designed to do. It was not designed for chronic issues. It was not designed for a lot of the things that we're now experiencing in our, you know, relatively abundant world with a lot of food, or too much food for most people. So it's simply not, it wasn't designed for it, and it's not equipped. So we now need a whole set of alternative ways of approaching things, which what's interesting is that it's the population. People are driving the change. They're not happy with their doctors. Doctors are no longer on that big pedestal. Like my grandparents, anything that the doctor said was gold. You know, doctors were God. Yep. You know, and from an ego standpoint, it's a little hard to lose that.
Right, yeah, of course.
But now someone's going to walk into your office having Googled it, having gone on WebMD, and they've self-diagnosed, and you're like, you know, it's like You just eradicated 10 years of medical school. There's all this stuff that happens. And so we're living in a different world. And I think it's tough for people to keep pace with that. The system that most people are educated and trained in is frankly not, sure, they're using iPads now to track patient records, but that's a small step in terms of the mindset shift that I think is needed, because people are living longer. They want to have compressed morbidity, like that term.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And 50s, 60s, 70s, why shouldn't I be able to run and do sports and be with my grandkids or great grandkids? I mean, people have different standards now than they used to have. So I think there's a massive, massive opportunity for people. And so people are worried about scarcity. Where's my money going to come from? Oh my gosh, people are willing to fund their better health more than I think most people anticipate.
I agree. And the thing I love about, the culture that you guys have created in an entrepreneurial organization is the number one thing is you got to add value first.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I love, we used to do work with insurance companies, and it was the most stressful time of my career.
Yeah.
And then finally I just said, why am I doing this? And we just increased the level of service that we provided, increased the value. We got more innovative. It forced me to just kind of really get in tune with what people really want, because it was survival. And so, I try and inspire others to do the same, because at the end of the day, it's the patient who wins. Yeah. And this is how we can really, I think we can create a much happier, much more abundant civilization if people have their health. I mean, actually, if you don't have your health, you don't have much. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't get out of bed, it's like, well, cool, you got a great looking house, you live in a gorgeous place, but are you really enjoying it? Not really. So,
I could not agree more. Yeah, and it's interesting. Dan was actually talking about this in another recording about, in a profession, there's a system there, and I think people get trapped by the system and held down by it, both doctors and patients too, and recognizing that you don't have to make it bad. We don't even have to make it wrong. It does what it was serving to do, but is it the best? No, it actually, for a long time, it's the lowest common denominator, and it does serve a purpose. But in terms of, I think there's an expanded purpose that we have now, and that people are wanting, and their voices are getting louder and louder, and we need people to serve those people, and to recognize that you can leapfrog and think about it more entrepreneurially and actually do really well. And your point, I think, is pretty brilliant about the realization that if you can't afford it, you can't innovate. So with the amount that the government was willing to pay, and you were never receiving it directly from the person. Dan was also talking about that, and that's true for a lot of professions, financial advisors and lawyers, and just is that you need to have that direct relationship with your clientele to really understand how best to create value for them. Otherwise, there's a mediation in between you and the other person, and you're actually not getting the best information, and you're actually not funding to serve people the way that they want to be served and need to be served. So it's an interesting, that's a whole kind of other conversation, but it's the potential to actually take better care of people is much higher when you have that direct relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I think it does go back to the culture conversation, because are we living in a culture where we want government to mandate and dictate what we're going to do with our lives and our health? And that's where we've kind of relied. We've used these political avenues, like you alluded to earlier in the conversation, to kind of force people down a certain pathway. We tried this thing called Obamacare in the United States, and brilliant, because we're trying to be innovative through politics. And what we thought is, okay, now that everyone's going to have health insurance, we'll all be healthier. And what happened over the course of the 8 years is we racked up more debt. We're a greater risk for financial collapse because of our healthcare system, and people have more chronic disease than they did when we started with the whole thing. So yeah, I look at it and I say, at the end of the day, capitalism being in a free market system, what I've learned through my own school of hard knocks is we've got to innovate. We've got to create these solutions for some of the toughest diseases that are on the planet. We can't let a larger organization do that. And researchers, we keep waiting for the research. I hear this in the stem cell world all the time, is like, oh, we just don't have enough research. I'm like, well, how much research do we really need? And do you realize that researchers are being funded to continually do research? So they want to finish, they never want to finish. And so as a clinician, I've got somebody who has a need like right now. Like today, they need to start feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to take that research and implement it right away. And I think if I was in a large bureaucratic organization, I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I was tied to the insurance company, I'd be on the phone like, hey, can we get approval for this procedure? And they say, oh, it's investigational. No, we're not going to cover it. Or they'll say, yes, we'll cover it. And then they won't cover it, So yeah, it's interesting. And then, with creating a culture, it does require us to be ourselves, because at the end of the day, no matter if you're a lawyer, a doctor, if you are a politician, people want the authentic you. And when there's a third party getting in the way, or like a kind of like a mother that's hovering over everyone, you can't be yourself. So yeah, I think, culture, we talked about kind of the micro, the macrocosm. What else on culture would be, kind of interesting that we could, enlighten people with?
That's first of all, great wrap up and summary. Thank you. And you said political innovation. I realized, those two words do not go in the same sentence in my head. Like, oh my gosh. I think in terms of, I always look at where to start. You know me, I like to get pretty practical with things. So how do people start, influencing their culture, identifying what they currently have? So it might, if people want to kind of take action on this, I think a lot of it is simply talking to your team. Like, what do you think of our culture? Is it working for you? What are some words you would use to describe our culture? And what they'll start to reflect actually will be your value system. So getting really clear on your values. I was just doing a coaching call for coach clients the other day. And we have an exercise where you ask the question, okay, what are the things you value and support? In other words, integrity, honesty, great hospitality, just really paying attention to what people are, taking care of people in the best way possible in terms of their dangers, opportunities, and strengths, that sort of thing, whatever your mindset is. And then another really telling way to figure out what your values are is what you will not put up with.
Yeah.
What will you walk people to the door about? What will you say no to a potential patient about? Where's your line? And I have to tell you, that's even more educational than the first list. Because we have a lot of things we like and will support, but it's the things we won't put up with is actually where it goes. So, and then you kind of do a brainstorm of, usually it's kind of wordy what your values are. And then what happens, we call them ground rules. And then you do a tighter list that's, but a fun and a positive attitude is one of ours. Those are two of, having fun, and we call it positive focus, focusing on progress, not perfection. Those are two of our core values. And people who always are focused on the negative, never willing to acknowledge progress, people who are not able to be playful. I actually think playfulness is a bit of a sign of intelligence, to be honest, because it means you can look at things from more than one perspective, or at least mental agility. That's part of our culture. That's part of our value system. And we have this document called the Extraordinary Coach Culture, which lays out 15. We were not stingy in this list, about things that are really important to us. And Marilyn actually is the one who meets with all of the new team members and goes through this list thoroughly and gets people talking about it and making it real for them. And then what's great is they've kind of been, I wouldn't use the word indoctrinated, but they've at least been educated as to what they're coming into. And I was in a bunch of sessions last year, a few months ago, where people say, okay, what brought you here or what's keeping you here as strategic coach? And to a person, they talked about our core values and how different it was than other companies. Other companies, they were looked at as a thing and a cog in a wheel, and here they were appreciated for who they were. And it was profound. And this is people been in 4, 5, 6 years. I was surprised. But you're really figuring out your core values, I think, is the essence of culture. I'm a big fan of Tony Hsieh and Zappos.com. Going online to their learning center and getting theirs, creating a wow experience, always create fun and a little weirdness. And if you've got to visit them, they are a little strange. I went during Tank Top Day. That was interesting. I went the day I was getting my tour, it was Tank Top Day. Every single person was wearing a tank top. This is $1 billion company. Anyway, it was quite fun. So, and they live it. Do more with less is one of theirs. So I think really being clear on your values, and you've got some great values too. And that educates the culture and gives people direction about what to do when you're not there It's a great
Yeah.
delegation, and lets people know, like, always do the right thing. I love that value. It means that you're always going to take care of somebody regardless of what it costs you. So anyway, those are as we talk about culture, to me, that's a great starting point, and kind of the bottom line a little bit is what people's values are. Do you want to share some of yours? Because I'm sure people would be interested.
Yeah, I think and I did this. I was with you guys in March of this year, and on the plane ride home, I'd been thinking about creating just kind of a new value system. We'd had some from the past, but it's years ago. And so I created this acronym called Start to Finish. And so, they start every patient encounter with positive wins, celebrate. And so one of the things we don't put up with is negativity in our team or patient interaction. So, I'm not going to be like guilting a patient because they had a cookie that night, art is healing. Healing is an art. So we don't put up with customer service that falls below the golden rule as it pertains to patients, teamwork, and collaboration with our vendors and suppliers. So yeah, those are some. Talking the talk means walking the walk. And this that one is we do things first. So we don't have any. There's no. Safety is number one. We're not going to ask somebody to do something that would lead to a lifelong of complications in their health. But the other thing that we have in that is we don't have complexity in our treatment plans, because you go to doctors and we want to just go and just unload everything on you guys, and we would just say, here's everything that's going wrong, and the patient's just overwhelmed and they don't do anything.
No.
And so yeah, simplicity is better than complexity. But yeah, those are a few of ours. I mean, it's so fun to have these. We have fun expands healing faster than seriousness. So we say we don't put up with the drama that comes with being too serious. Like it's no fun, right? So
oh my gosh, drama is my least favorite aspect of anything. No, like my husband actually likes the fact, he said one of the things about Shannon is there's just no drama. Yeah. But yeah, so I love that you have that as part of your values. That's awesome.
Yeah, but just, I mean, it's very fun. Initiate with your own unique talents. And then our last one is half-assed is better than no-assed. So,
yep.
So we said, look, we don't put up with entitlement or distractions to the goals we're trying to meet. Like, at least show up and do your best. We get that you're not going to be perfect every day, which is a big deal.
That's very cool. And it's another way to say that is it's better to do something and have attempted it and learn from it than to not do anything at all. Yeah. So that's really, it's that antidote to perfectionism, which is rampant in most medical people I've talked to, is they want things to be perfect, 100%, tested 18 ways, no way to get sued before they're willing to try something. And it's just, it holds back progress. It holds back healing. And if you can get that mindset into, take action and learn from it rather than, procrastinating because you're worried about it's not perfect, is such an awesome push in the right direction for people to be in motion. Progress happens when you're in motion. It can't happen if you're just stuck. So that's a very fun one. Yeah. And very playfully put, I might add.
Yeah, kind of funny.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, but I think this, the culture you've created there, Shannon, I thank you, because I looked, I've been hearing about Strategic Coach. I've listened to Dan on podcasts for years. Finally, I was like, all right, I just had to clear out. I was with a bunch of different groups and I just had to finish and said, all right, this is going to become my priority. And from the moment I stepped in there, you guys, actually, we had this little dinner meeting before at the Ritz-Carlton, and you and Marilyn were just so welcoming. And I could just feel, I was like, I'm in the right place. I found my family. So I just got to thank you for creating an amazing culture, because I can feel the love that you guys have in your team. And then as a client of yours, it's just like, I feel like I can relax, and I can just be my authentic self. I don't feel like there's judgment. I feel like, Reagan's made some, like he's going to make mistakes, but he's also doing really big things, and you guys are phenomenal in your support. So thanks for creating that culture.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I love that you picked up on it so clearly as well. Like, you're open to it. And I think when you people can be their best selves when you remove the barriers. So creating that safe space, being clear on values, like I just have so much love to give because I'm not playing defense. No defense budget is one of our others. And
Yeah.
so and it's so easy when we know who you are. We want actually coach to be your entrepreneurial family because it can be hard to find one out in the world. We're well aware of that. And it's a safe space. And when you said mistakes, I'm like, you don't make mistakes. I mean, maybe something isn't sunk in yet. Maybe, you're struggling, but the word mistake doesn't actually occur to me, which is kind of fun.
It's me like, I forgot to use an impact filter. It's like,
what do you do? Join the club.
Right.
It's like we don't make people wrong. And so it becomes, if we like that first of all, I love working in that environment and I love creating it for other people. And then I think that's something you can then go and take back to your organization. And then you can pass that on to other people's practices. And so it kind of becomes this very positive ripple effect, which is, it's great to be able to spread love and joy and happiness. And so people can be their best selves. That ultimately is what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, I love it. And what it's helped me to do too is I said, well, when I have my Go Wellness events and we have doctors come in from all over the country, it's like, okay, how can I just now I know how it feels, like, let me bring some love in. So it's been huge. And
Awesome.
yeah, really appreciate this opportunity we had. We have to do this again.
Yeah.
And we'll continue the conversation. How can people reach out to you? How can they learn about Strategic Coach? What's the best way?
Oh my gosh, strategiccoach.com. And there are so many entrepreneurial resources on there. We have this new awesome way of, you can do searches, you can do finds, and there's lists of all the different kinds of information. So it's a little entrepreneurial universe if someone wants to go and check that out, learn more about the program, listen to podcasts. I think is great. I do one with Dan called Inside Strategic Coach. And I think if someone wants to understand the thinking, the mindset behind Coach, that's how we've structured it. And he and I just have a great time playing around in conversation. My husband listened to one the other day and liked it, so that was good news.
Nice.
So we got a lot of positive feedback from that. So that would be one great, easy way to touch base, but strategiccoach.com has a wealth of resources. And as we said, we have those little quarterly books. So if you want to learn more about the impact filter tool that you were talking about, the Extraordinary Impact Filter is one of our latest books. And so there's lots of ways where we just give you a lot, to see, and if it's the right fit, then great, come and work and have the experience that you're having. But there's lots of ways to kind of get your feet wet. And then my passion is entrepreneurial teamwork. And so if you want to do a deeper dive into that, go to yourteamsuccess.com. And that's where there's downloads of exercises like the entrepreneurial attitude and the communication builder and the positive focus. And then also my recommended reading list, because I'm an avid reader, love to find people whose thinking aligns with mine and vice versa. So if you want to educate yourself, that's some things there, along with the couple books and my podcast on iTunes. So Team Success Podcast is another great way to kind of find out more about entrepreneurial teamwork, issues, challenges, opportunities, things that work, things that don't. I love exploring all of those things and interviewing authors. So that's the best way to get in touch.
Love it. Well, Shannon is a hero in creating teams that can connect with an entrepreneur and bringing us all together. So really appreciate all the work you're doing. You're doing healing in the world, one life at a time. I mean, I believe like our mission to end pain and chronic disease, it's no different because work is what we do most of our lives. So
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for all your great work. And
you too.
I'll look forward to seeing you in Toronto in a couple of weeks.
Well, thank